Okay, I have my first collection of images here from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Sometimes the way the opening title is presented to us is interesting and important. I couldn't help but notice the movement of the foliage in the background through the ideograms. Nature as an idea being presented to us almost immediately. The entire opening credit sequence, with the exception of this moment, is presented to us in darkness with subtle, soft music happening in the background. It's interesting to me that the film begins with nature, but really more with darkness. I'm interested to hear what the observatory has to say about that. Making my way through this film in the beginning, I normally find myself grabbing a lot more images, and while I was incredibly moved and impressed by the beauty of so many of these opening images, having seen the film many times, I realized I wouldn't get very far if I allowed myself to get captured by the aesthetic beauty, so I really tried to focus on moments that I thought were particularly meaningful. And our introduction to Mu Bai jumped out at me as being important. I thought it was very interesting, given how Michelle Yeoh's character is presented to us. We can't see it yet, but walking through civilized spaces, walking through groups of people, through streets. I thought Mu Bai's introduction here, walking across a bridge over the surface of water, escorting a horse as opposed to riding a horse, and jumping out at us as being alone and also not centered in the frame. Right off the bat, all of these things struck me as intentional and meaningful. The idea of him walking across this bridge over water, like you could say that just happens to be how he entered. I don't think it happens to be how they chose to have him enter the film. This is, if you've seen this film, this must jump out at us as purposeful. It's mythic, the way he's walking across water to enter this space, and significant that he is guiding the horse as opposed to riding it. This to me suggests one who is a companion to nature, if that makes any sort of sense. He doesn't command nature. He walks alongside it. And obviously his costume design, the very muted nature of it, nothing flamboyant here, the use of the color gray and white, well, white isn't a color and gray isn't either, but also feel purposeful to me, especially against the contrast of the brown horse behind him. Idea of being colorless in a natural world seems significant. And he's not centered in the frame. We know that this is a character who is associated with knowledge and wisdom and enlightenment if we've seen the film, and you would expect him to occupy and hold a centered space, but he is not holding a centered space. While this might seem like a coincidence, I think you'll agree as we make our way deeper in the film, this was a choice. He enters the compound where Yu Shulian can be found. And the beginning of the movie has a bunch of thresholds and doorways in it. And if I've learned anything in these encounterings, it's to pay attention to that when it is featured regularly. It is interesting to me that they take this moment to show Mu Bai step through this threshold into the dojo, a place where he shouldn't need permission to access it. He is more or less a master of combat. This is a space he obviously has spent a tremendous amount of time in before, not generally as like a general dojo space, but specifically this dojo. It is a place where almost certainly his relationship to Yu Shulian has much of its foundation. And when he steps through this modest doorway, it feels like he's asking for permission. It feels unexpectedly significant that he's stepping through this threshold in this way. In fact, to me, when I watched him step through it, it felt uncertain. And you wouldn't expect him, stepping into this space of all spaces, to feel like he needs permission to enter it, which to me invites us to consider, does he feel like he needs permission to enter all of this civilized space, right? All right, so he encounters Yu Shuyan. She is centered in the frame in the moment that we encounter her. This, to me, helps us understand she is in her place. She is in her element. This is her dojo. This is her space. She commands it, and she's emotionally centered in the moment right up to this contact and encountering with Mu Bai, who she obviously has known for quite some time. I'll also say that I think the composition of this image is very interesting. It plays a lot with, the way images can be composed in a balanced way, and yet it is kind of not balanced and balanced at the same time. I love how she's aligned with the art behind her. I love how the two trees anchor her, but they don't anchor her as, symmetrically as you might expect, and yet there is a kind of balance here. And then you have the empty wall on one side on the right, and then you have a not empty wall on the other side. To me, it suggests what we're going to see here pretty soon here, where there is the possibility for imbalance, even though she commands this space with certainty. Now uncertainty has entered into it. Which brings us to all of the shots that follow of nobody being centered anymore. Him returning has uncentered her, and he has never been presented to us as being centered up until this point. I think it's interesting that this is shot not perpendicular to the wall, where the wall is straight onto us, but we get this sense that the wall is moving off away from us diagonally. I think that's intentional to create a subtle imbalancing of the space. And what do they talk about? They talk about training and meditation and enlightenment, and she envies him for the peace that he must have achieved in his training on, I think it's called Wushan Mountain. I don't remember off the top of my head. He tells her that he broke off his meditation. He couldn't go on. He had a vision. He saw something that his master had never prepared him for. I'm not going to continue to drill the off-centered thing here, but yeah, off-center. All right, and then he tells her that he has returned the sword Green Destiny, and that he doesn't feel worthy of wielding it anymore. And he points out how much blood and violence and death has resulted from the use of this weapon. This weapon's very special. It looks incredibly pure. Blood washes off of it very, very easily, he points out. But he doesn't feel right using the weapon anymore because of the violence that is inherent to it. I think the way the weapon is presented to us is fascinating. It looks pure. It looks clean to us. I think the choice to have the blade pointing at us, penetrating the bottom of the frame as if it is penetrating us, is a very interesting choice. And I love this image because it does seem to center Mu Bai here. But I noticed as it continued to show him being centered, you might think this is a coincidence, but in a film that is all about balance, I don't think it is. He's always leaning. It's like his foundation, the base of him, is centered. But it's like his headspace after this vision is sort of askew. It's off-center from his own foundation. And he is, of course, looking down at his sword. Maybe, possibly the origin of what is unsettling him is the blade itself. And it's like it's pulling him off his center of access. And it has created this imbalance in him. I think it's fascinating. I didn't capture this image because of the image. I captured it because of the idea that is captured in the dialogue. You use the sword justly. You are worthy of it. And it's as if he has come to recognize the inherent darkness of the blade. And in his attempt to achieve enlightenment, he's recognized that there is conflict, tension between the peace that he is trying to achieve and the incredible deadliness, mythical deadliness of this weapon. And the two things don't seem to be aligned. And while she recognizes that he is worthy of it, and that perhaps only somebody who is so peaceful and who loves peace to such a degree should be the one to use it, and is the only one who could use it justly. I love the way this entire moment plays with the idea of justice. Is justice possible when you wield something that kills so perfectly? Can anyone be worthy of this? It's a fascinating question. It is, of course, one of the central questions of the entire film. And in response to this question, we get another one of these shots where he's seemingly centered. His foundation, right, the base of him is centered, but his head is off center. And in another film, I might see this as a coincidence, but in a Chinese film about martial arts and balance and poise and in fighting stances, he is off balance, right? This is such a great shot. All right, so she agrees to take the sword, and what we get here is her with a horse and her passing through the realm of civilized people. She passes through threshold after threshold. She is told she is allowed to pass over and over again. She is accepted by communities. She talks with people. This is very different from Mu Bai's introduction, where you get this sense that, yes, he enters into this civilized space, but does he have permission anymore? After all of the blood that has found its way onto that blade through his use of it, it's as if he doesn't feel like he has the permission anymore. And so this subtle choice to show him stepping into the dojo through this threshold as if he's asking for permission, that's why I thought it was so meaningful. I love how she not only passes through these threshold after threshold repeatedly like this, past all these people, and is accepted and allowed, permitted, welcomed even. I love that the archway frames her, and I love that she's returned to being centered. It's like in the presence of Mu Bai, she's obviously thrown off her center because of their relationship. But now given a purpose again, given a kind of quest, right? She's back in her space where she understands her purpose and her role, and she returns to just being, I mean, could she not be more straight up and down? We were talking about balance and, posture and stances, right? And she just is in complete command of her body in this moment. And it is as if the stone that frames her, the wall, and she are one. I don't think it's an accident that her costume design maybe, is meant to connect her to the stone architecture. And if you've seen this film, she's a rock, right? I mean, this woman is a rock. Okay. More thresholds that she's passing through here. More people that she's passing through it with, walking alongside, not entering these spaces alone. Again centered here in this image, but interestingly riding the horse. I wonder if there's a little bit of a contrast in this moment as well. I didn't grab a bunch of images of her riding the horse, but she spends much of this time entering these spaces, passing through civilized space, riding the horse, which also has the secondary effect of elevating her above many of the people that she's passing through. Still centered. I think this is a very interesting shot. Now, she looks over as she's passing through the city, And she sees this girl, and I think there's a boy over here as well, but she sees this girl who is performing this incredible feat of balance and acrobatics and demonstration of being centered, right? As she balances these bowls on her head while, I mean, this shot is awesome. And when she looks over at this girl, it cuts back to Yu Shulian. It cuts back to her, and she's unsettled by what she sees here. I mean, one, obviously she must appreciate the skill and the mastery required by this child to do this. But I think when she sees this girl and how balanced she is, even though she is being represented to us as being centered and in control of herself, I think, deep down, she knows that her own balance has been thrown a little bit off. I think it's interesting that the camera doesn't choose to represent her to us in that way. I think sometimes we can doubt ourselves, but the doubt doesn't have a foundation. We aren't actually off balance, but that doesn't mean that we don't doubt ourselves. And so I think her looking at this incredibly balanced moment, she wonders if she herself holds that same command over herself anymore. And then if you thought I was exaggerating about the passing through thresholds in civilized spaces, I mean, then we get this shot to sort of culminate her continuing to pass through civilized spaces. She's one of these horses down here. I think she's here-ish. I don't remember where. But then she's going to pass through this threshold at the base of this incredible structure into this, past all these people, through presumably another doorway and another doorway and another doorway, and the point could not be clearer. She passes these spaces openly, welcomely, with permission, and is allowed. And while he certainly would be allowed to do the same thing, it's obvious he doesn't feel that way, and the camera seems to be questioning whether he can as well. Anyway, I'm very interested to hear what the observatory has to say. All right, let's see what the observatory has to say. I went to New York for a week. I haven't made one of these videos for a while. Definitely feel a little rusty. This is a skill, doing this kind of live. Always a little raw. Never try to pick something I have completely memorized. If you've seen this film and you love this film, I presume anybody who's clicked this video has seen it. If you haven't seen Le Pacte des Loups, Brotherhood of the Wolf, go see that movie. Sometimes I would guide you towards the director's cut of something. In this case, I would say watch the original, and then maybe after that watch the director's cut. That movie is fantastic. I'm guessing the observatory is going to pick up on entire categories of stuff I missed here this time. Recently, I've really begun to feel like my interpretation are incredibly aligned, but like I said, I feel a little rusty. Yeah, so one of the challenges I felt analyzing this film was that the film is dense, but dense in a different way. It's dense through restraint, posture, thresholds, negative space, muted color. Films like this can be harder to analyze, at least for me. Yeah, and one of the central questions of the film, what does it mean to be balanced when the deepest part of you is unsettled? And both of these characters have that in common. Interesting way of framing it. The title begins with nature inside language. This is one of those things that I knew it was going to find that I think I normally would have found, but that's so cool. Yeah, nature appears inside the written title. Yeah, and the language is filled with movement, texture, leaves, green, wind. I wish I had mentioned that. That's nice. Yeah, so it creates tensions. Language and landscape, culture and nature, title and world, stillness and motion. A beautiful early paradox. The film begins in darkness, but not emptiness. The darkness contains form. The text contains nature. Stillness contains motion. That does indeed feel very much what this film is all about. We are entering a world where important things are not immediately visible. Desire, violence, grief, the self, power, love, a young woman's ambition, Mu Bai's disturbance are all hidden. So it's saying that the darkness may also be the natural visual environment of a film about things that cannot yet be spoken. That's a really beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, Mu Bai enters as someone between worlds. I wish I had noticed that. Oh, that's nice. He's walking beside the horse, not riding it, moving over water, not through a crowded street, accompanied by nature, but not absorbed into it, near civilization, but not yet inside it. The bridge matters. It is itself its own kind of threshold. Neither here nor there. Yeah, that's the nature of the bridge as a threshold, right? It's neither here nor there. It's between spaces. They allow passage, but they also delay arrival. This is interesting because I was talking in my last encountering the Iron Giant. I was talking about passing through the storm and how passing through the storm was a really interesting choice, the way they represented it to us, because they represented the storm as like this long tunnel. But you could also imagine a hurricane as being like a hole in a sheet of paper, very, very, very thin, and that passing through it would be almost instant, right? It would be like going through a doorway. But they represented the storm there as a tunnel, as something between two spaces that you have to inhabit. Here again, the bridge is kind of like the same idea, where it's like he has to inhabit the threshold as a space itself. That's really, really cool and interesting. He doesn't just get to instantly, like, be on the other side of the doorway, right? Huh. So his introduction is, a man returns from elsewhere but does not yet fully belong to the place he is entering. Yep. Nailed it. Yeah, Mu Bai walking with the horse suggests humility, restraint, companionship, perhaps even renunciation. Ooh. Yeah, so if the horse is a representation of mastery, speed, power, martial mobility, and if he walks alongside it, then he is stepping away from power. You know, he could be on the horse to add to his power and his speed and his movement, right? But he's walking with it, stepping away from possession, away from the sword, away from the heroic role he has occupied. Nice. Still associated with the horse and the force and the travel and right? But not performing dominance. Yeah, usually N is introduced as centered, but not simplistically so. And it's not perfectly symmetrical, right? Yes, this lack of perfect symmetry feels true to her character. She is centered, disciplined, deeply composed, but she's not emotionally inert. Her balance is alive, not mechanical. Oh, I very much agree. Balance good, imbalance bad is not what the film is ever saying. It's not saying that balance is necessarily good. I mean, you could imagine someone like Mu Bai wielding the blade and being in perfect balance with it, but is that a good thing? I mean, is it? I mean, what if it's a time of peace and violence is not required, you know? Maybe we wouldn't want somebody wielding such a blade in such a time, you know? And also, to grow, I think we usually have to encounter being imbalanced as opposed to balanced. Balanced suggests having achieved a final answer, but life is kind of more about navigating moments of imbalance and always trying to maybe return to your center, you know, or find a new centered space, which represents growth, but then there's a new challenge and a new challenge. Yeah, so I says, Mu Bai's return unsettles the frame. Yeah, his arrival does not create melodrama, but it does shift the geometry of the world. In a martial arts film, posture is never just posture. Balance is not just visual composition. It is moral, spiritual, emotional, and physical. Agreed. The sword pulls him off his axis. Yeah, so Li Mu Bai seems visually centered, at least in his base, but his head and attention are pulled to the side and downward toward the blade. The blade becomes a gravitational object. Yeah, the sword appears pure, but it carries impurity inherently. It appears beautiful, but contains violence, possibly ugliness. It appears worthy, but makes worthiness uncertain. It only looks pure may be a key to the whole film. May also apply to people, roles, traditions, reputations. Oh, this is definitely true, having seen the film many times. And forms of discipline. Yeah. A warrior may look composed, a noble household may look honorable, a young aristocratic woman may look obedient, a master may look enlightened, yeah. A sword may look clean, a relationship may look resolved. But yeah, there's always complexity behind the purity. Longing, resentment, violence, grief, blood, desire, history, ambition. I agree. The film is very interested in the difference between surface purity and buried turbulence. Yeah, so can justice be achieved through a weapon that kills perfectly? Yeah, it's also noting that the way her costume links her to the stone is beautiful. There are a lot of shots that are just aesthetically gorgeous in this movie. It's one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. But it does create this architectural continuity between her, the world around her, and the civilized space too. And the archway frames her, it almost enshrines her in a way. She belongs to built space, ritual space, official space, social space. Which again, I think this one is the one that must hurt Li Mu Bai a lot. Is, you know, I imagine he wonders if he's even worthy of being around people anymore. And agreed, it doesn't mean she is merely civilized in a limiting way. She is a carrier of order. It's why she's being allowed to carry the blade. It's why she's the one that he trusts, right? And she does know how to move through human systems. And I think after all of Li Mu Bai's meditations, I wonder if he thinks that he knows how to move through human systems anymore either, you know? She understands codes, permissions, ranks, gates, exchanges, and obligations. Yeah, Li Mu Bai may be spiritually elevated, but Yu Shu Lian is socially fluent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, there's just too many thresholds to ignore it. I made a video about Ed Wood, and that, you know, a filmmaker can choose to start the scene in the room, right? The characters are there, the dialogue begins, you start the scene in the room. When a filmmaker chooses to show somebody passing through doorway after doorway after doorway and to keep showing them, that is a choice. That is time that the camera is being used to put images in front of you, right? And too many doors, bridges, gates, archways, and compound entrances and city passages for us to ignore this. They want us to notice the thresholds. And it opens all sorts of questions. Who may enter? Who feels permitted to enter? Who carries something dangerous through the threshold? Who belongs inside? Who is merely passing through? Who is welcomed? Who is watched? Yep. Li Mu Bai crosses thresholds, I would say just thresholds, with uncertainty, whereas Yu Shu Lian crosses them with authority and recognition. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Yu Shu Lian moves through civilization with permission. And again, as the observatory would often say, it's not as simple as she has permission, he doesn't. I already get that. I think Li Mu Bai absolutely could walk through all these spaces. Nobody would stop him. He'd be welcomed. I think he'd actually maybe even be slightly revered if people recognized him, right? But I don't think he feels like he has permission anymore. Yeah, so it's also noticing the repetition. The film could have shortened the passage. Again, I was just talking about this. The film could have just shown her arriving in the space, delivering the sword. No, it shows her talking to random people at gates, asking for passage, being granted it, walking alongside them, walking through people. Yeah. And she's not sneaking. And this is a film that does have a lot of sneaking and stealing in it too, right? She's not fleeing. It has a lot of fleeing in it. She's not invading. She's passing through recognized systems, being recognized by them, and seen to be acceptable. Yes, his power is mythic, martial, and spiritual. Hers is relational, social, diplomatic, embodied, and practical. Yeah, so Mu Bai enters from water, bridge, exterior, solitude, and uncertainty. Pulling some things forward from later in the film. He's associated with the discussion with Yushu Lian in the cave. He talks to Jen in the bamboo forest. His relationship to spaces are very different, whereas Yushu Lian is often seen like in the dojo, in rooms, in civilized compound, by walls. But yeah, back to what it was saying. Yeah, two kinds of mastery. I totally agree with this. Mu Bai, mastery of combat, meditation, interior discipline, mythic self-command. Yushu Lian, also mastery of combat. Mastery of social passage, embodied poise, relational obligation, worldly movement. Yeah, both are masters, and yet both are still constrained. Agreed. Centering does not always mean certainty. Yeah, so she's often centered, but that does not mean she's untouched. I love how a camera, we encountered this in The Iron Giant, where the camera chose to frame the fisherman who was telling this wild tale, and everybody was telling him he was crazy. The camera chose to frame the crazy fisherman in a balanced way, right? The camera has the ability to make a choice and to take a side and the camera's doing that in this movie too. It's like we see signs in Yushu Lian that she is imbalanced, she is experiencing doubt, she is emotionally troubled, but it comes back to showing her being anchored, balanced, a part of her world. A camera can be forgiving. And I like that about film, where the camera can be a character that speaks to us. Yeah, the camera may show Yushu Lian is centered because she objectively remains composed, but internally she may still feel the tremor, the imbalance. Yeah, obviously the acrobatic girl becomes a mirror of balance, and seeing that mirror troubles her. Agreed, it may not be because Yushu Lian lacks balance. Yeah, the girl externalizes controlled poise under pressure. I mean, can you think of a phrase that captures Yushu Lian better than that one? Controlled poise under pressure. And the girl is young. Yushu Lian may not see only skill, but the fragile beginning in the child of a life shaped by discipline. Then that absolutely does connect beautifully to Jen later in the film. Yep. The film is already contrasting stillness and motion. Good observation. Foliage moving inside a still title. Mu Bai walks, the horse follows, Yushu Lian passes through spaces, people move around gates and markets. The girl performs balance, the sword sits still. Yeah, the sword is one of the stillest objects in the sequence, but it is absolutely the most disruptive thing in the film. Stillness does not equal peace. Motion does not equal chaos. The choice to pass the green destiny on to a person, to me, is very interesting. Sorry I keep referencing other forms of media, but it really reminds me of The Lord of the Rings and the decision to carry the ring into Mordor, and the recognition that they can't just throw the ring in the ocean. To me, it's the same idea. I mean, you have to think that it must be tempting to Mu Bai to, like Excalibur, right? Just throw the blade somewhere into nature, into a lake, into a river, into an ocean, into a chasm, into a volcano, right? And just hope that it be forgotten. But particularly in this case, this is a responsibility that he carries, and not wanting to wield the blade anymore is one thing, but I think it says a lot about him that he does pass it on to another person, a person he trusts. Yeah, the act of letting go is not simple. When one person renounces power, someone else may have to transport it, guard it, explain it, or suffer the consequences of its movement. And like the Ring of Power in The Lord of the Rings, it's like, do we really think that the Green Destiny or Excalibur or the One Ring, that they're going to allow themselves to be lost? They're not, Who then might take up that blade? Ooh, the film's beauty may be a temptation. Yeah, I had to resist grabbing every single beautiful image. Could have talked about nature for days, or the perfect way that the civilization shots and the rule of thirds. And yeah, I was just like, oh, stop. You're never going to make any progress at all. As it is, it's almost been an hour. We've only been through one series of images. Might have to stop. Yeah, it is connected to the film itself. This is one of the things I love about this noticing process, too, is that every single choice I make encountering the film is significant. It's like I have to make a choice where it's like, am I going to stop at every beautiful image? No. But isn't it interesting that there were so many beautiful images, and that there was so much, and that in order to say something concrete and to get to the story I had, that is itself worth noticing. This is a film about surfaces of extraordinary beauty. Beautiful bodies, combat, costumes, landscapes, architecture, weapons, spaces, thresholds. But all that beauty may only, be things looking pure on the outside. Yeah, beauty is real here, but beauty may also conceal pain, violence, longing, moral uncertainty. I absolutely agree. When you consider Jen as a character, right? I mean, does this not capture her? Beauty may also conceal pain, violence, longing, and moral uncertainty. That's Jen, right? Yeah, do admire the beauty, but keep asking what the beauty is carrying. Well, Jen's carrying the blade, and a lot of personal stuff, too. All right, so can a person live in balance when love, violence, duty, and desire all pull the self in different directions? Mu Bai has discipline, but not peace. Yu Shu Lian has poise, but not emotional simplicity. The sword has purity of surface, but a history of blood. The city has order, but also hidden danger. The title promises hidden energies beneath visible forms. What kind of self must each character become in order to pass through a given space? Concluding this video, I'm really torn. I have found making these encountering videos that I am often very torn trying to figure out pacing, length, these things coming into tension with getting a little deeper in the film, having enough ideas emerge, wanting to give the images in the film the space it needs to be encountered properly. So much emerges in so little time. We typically only maybe make it 2 minutes into a film, and it's like so much already jumps out, which is amazing and wonderful. I don't know, maybe somebody will watch this video one day and offer me some advice, and maybe down the road I'll get this and think of something I haven't thought of. But I was rusty here encountering this film. But I did notice that when I wasn't rusty, my thoughts really started to become pretty strongly aligned with what the observatory, what ChatGPT would observe, and that the points that it would surface would be less frequent, still very relevant and interesting, like checking an engine when you're playing chess, right? Very interesting. I'm starting to wonder if I'm not feeling rusty, maybe leaning a little bit less on time given to it, maybe just trying to organize the most important points that emerge from it so that I can return to the film and spend a little longer in the film, maybe trusting myself a little more, my own analysis. Something to consider, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, because I know these encountering videos are still really trying to figure out their form. And it may take a long time. I may do this for a year and still not quite have a handle on it. But difficult skills like teaching in front of a class, like this is a performance. I just have to do this. It's not rehearsed. I don't script this. Over time, I'm confident that it will find itself. I guess the other thing that I keep returning to before I close this video is I went to New York. I came back after a week, didn't sit down and record a video for 2 or 3 days after that. So it was really almost a week and a half between recordings. And I felt a lot of nervous energy returning to it, which is one of the reasons why I came back after 2 or 3 days. It took a lot to motivate myself to sit down in front of the camera and just encounter the film, and what happens. It's a little scary. But having inhabited this again, having done it, sitting before you now, sitting with the film and letting it, wash over me. I've commented on this in earlier encounterings, but I really enjoyed doing this. It felt very meditative. I feel like I can return to my day and be a little more settled and a little more calm, especially encountering a film as settling as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But anyway, thank you for inhabiting a space with me. Anytime I do these encounterings, I'm always hoping that you notice things that have meaning and that jump out at you. And I would love for you to share things that you notice in the chat below, and maybe other people will notice things too, and for a dialogue there to occur, or maybe connections between this film and another film, as I did. You saw me connecting this film to other films, things it reminded you of that you thought were meaningful. And although this has not happened yet, what I really want to build are not the videos. What I want to build is the space that happens afterward, where people come together and have their own observations, whatever they may be, and we connect, Anyway, thank you for inhabiting this space, and I hope you have a wonderful day.